Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Thursdays with Mike. I am actually back on Idaho soil, which has been the occasion of, well, there was great rejoicing. It was just nice to be back. And I actually had a conversation out here on this patio with a young man. It was two days ago. It doesn't really matter. It's funny when you get old, you interrupt stories to try to remember chronologies. It's an interesting phenomenon. But anyway, I had a conversation with a young man whose life has been disrupted. I know you probably can't identify with us. But his life has been disrupted. He was just going to be here for the summer and working, and then plans with school in the fall, and everything just continues to be up in the air. And so he was just asking, basically, so how do I process this? And he's he's young and in his 20s, and just looking for perspective, whatever I might be able to provide. Hopefully, I helped. This is kind of what I had to say, coming fresh out of this period of personal disruption, definitely. Which, goodness, I'm not going to complain about. I was in Maryland, surrounded by forests. It was isolation. It was kind of day after day after day. It went on 15 days longer than it was supposed to, and there's like nowhere to go, nothing to do. So just reading, contemplation, writing, some conversations. Didn't binge watch anything. Just kind of leaned into the time and took walks each evening. Would walk up, and because my daughter and granddaughter had very graciously, thankfully, been placed in a room with these just massive windows, which lots of natural light, but they were right in front and the ground floor, and so we each evening had what I called our jail visit, and we just communicate through speaker phones. Even watched an episode of Community with them via speaker phone through the window. This man standing in the bushes. All looked very, very dicey. But anyway, so the days were definitely filled, and there was a freedom and a flow to the days, which was nice because maybe I shouldn't say nice, but it was just unique. I could see how one could really climb the walls, but I wasn't climbing the walls. I was trying to enjoy the space. So anyway, but coming through that and having no idea whether or not I in fact still be there now, or even in August, to begin to feel like, okay, this is like my new mailing address. Okay, but yeah, again, it wasn't a gulag, but it was disruption. And so bringing that fresh context into this conversation, found myself talking about two things. Number one of the books that I've memorized as far as scriptures, memorized most of the letters, just about all of the letters. 2 Corinthians never quite made it really all the way through. That would be an interesting, I think that season's probably done now. But anyway, James, love to get up and just preach the book of James. It's like Sermon on the Mount, book 2, or version 2, or exposition on the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' brother, very much with the same message, and just packaged a little bit differently. It's sermon in the synagogue as opposed to Sermon on the Mount, I suppose. And one of those sections, whenever I would preach it, there would come to it's one we would debate about. I think in former times, as to maybe the technicalities of it, as to whether or not you really have to verbalize this and so forth. But I think it's something that we should probably now understand a whole lot more intimately and personally. It's not just theory. It's not just nice words. And we used to have the luxury of thinking, I guess I should be more like this. Okay, but this is the passage. It's about the middle of chapter 4, or as I like to say, page 4 of the sermon, where James says, "Come now, you that say, today or tomorrow. We will both live and go to such and such a city, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will both live and go to such and such a city and so forth. If the Lord wills, we will live and then we'll see what we do. For what is your life? It is even as a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills. And then he caps the whole thing off with a statement that instead of acknowledging if the Lord wills both live and do this or that, instead you boast and you brag, and all such boasting is evil. And then caps off the whole chapter with a statement that tends to be a standalone one for one of the ways we define what sin is, because evangelicals, of course, are very concerned with defining sin because we have to avoid it like the plague. And that is, therefore, to the one that knows to do good but doesn't do it, to him it is sin. Which is an interesting connection that's sandwiched right in between this presumption about life and then the next section, which is still dealing with a whole lot of presumption. It's chapter 5. Come now, you rich, weep, howling for the miseries which are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, your garments are moth-eaten. That so much echoes Matthew 6, Sermon on the Mount. Don't store up your treasures on earth with moth and rust corrupt and so forth. But come now, you rich, weep, howling for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness, it will be a testimony against you, and so forth. So right in between, a whole lot of arrogant presumption from people who are wealthy and are used to being in control of life. Is this to the one who knows to do good but doesn't do it, to him it is sin, which perhaps is a little place marker in the middle of it, telling us in the midst of being wealthy and being able to, quote unquote, control life, or having the resources to accomplish so much, which end up being very self-directed and self-focused and self-agenda. It becomes about me and my life and my plans and my ambitions, that there is the good that we ought to do. It's the storing up treasures in heaven, which is, again, not the ethereal by and by. I do good things and it builds up a bank account up there or something, so that when I die and retire from this wretched scene, then I'll have this glorious life, afterlife, in an ethereal existence in heaven with Jesus. But it very much, storing up treasures in heaven, is like an alternate dimension of I guess dimensional work of how we, and it has to do with investing in one another. It's investing in the things that matter most, investing as we are connecting with God, with the planet, and with people, basically, and with ourselves. We begin to see what really matters. But anyway, so I'm going through this with the young man. And it just strikes me. It just strikes me that I used to talk about this, and it's just like one of those, come now, you either say today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you don't know what will happen tomorrow, because what is your life? It is even as a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Blah 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 blah. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills. And so we'll just kind of politely say, well, I will. I'll see you tomorrow, if the Lord wills, and so should we say that? Do we have to? And the fact is, we need to. We're just aware we need to. We can make plans, whether they're travel plans or vocational plans, and it is so if the Lord wills, because we're not in control of this. And the sense that our life is a vapor, that appears for a little while. The picture is that of, if I thought about it, I would have had like a match, and but the picture is that as soon as the vapor materializes, it's dematerializing. I mean, that's kind of the picture. Is that here's the vapor and there it goes, and we're all in this process of appearing and then disappearing. And for the most part, we're totally ignorant of that. We don't live in that reality. That's a reality that makes us very uncomfortable. We're after permanence. I'm really thinking that's what's okay. I'm not like a psychologist or a cultural psychologist, but I just can't help but wonder if that doesn't drive a lot of the mania and just just a rudeness that we have towards each other. I mean, we're just attacking each other on so many levels in our culture. And I'm thinking the lack of courtesy, consideration, and just rudeness, where we're assaulting each other verbally or even physically or even mortally, is because it's like that's the one thing we can do. It's the one way we can express control, because there's precious little else that we're really able to control at this point. And we've got today. That's what we've got. We've got today. And hopefully we've got tomorrow. But if the Lord wills, we'll have tomorrow. And we'll have this vocational plan or this vocational path. And we'll be able to buy food or grow food or... and who knows, maybe actually travel someplace. But it's life lived with this open hand. And so that's the first place I went to him. And of course, then I asked, so how are you enjoying the session so far? Because if you were looking for finding firm footing now, well, the firm footing is knowing that I never had any control. We're just now intensely aware of it. It's so not back burner, but right on the front in our face. It's not even on the front burner. It's like our face is the front burner, and so it puts us ultimately into this place of Matthew 6. And I just recently wrote about this pivotal passage in Matthew 6 of don't worry about your life. What you'll eat or what you'll drink or about what you'll wear, your body, what you're going to put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? And Jesus says, look at the birds of the air. Look at the flowers of the field. The birds don't toil or labor or have barns to store in them. They've got nests, but they don't have barns, and they are not involved in a big manufacturing enterprise with budgets and projected income and profit and loss schedules and so forth. And the flowers of the field are not they're not subscribers to Vogue magazine, and they don't have closets filled with alternative garb and adornment. They are clothed as God clothes them, and they are here today and they're gone tomorrow and thrown into the fire. So there you go. So once again, it's like, okay, so how are you enjoying this little counseling session? Is it motivating you? And hopefully it does. Because ultimately, this gets us to ground zero of what it means actually to be humans. Just previous, Jesus, in Matthew 6, Jesus had talked about how that you cannot serve God and mammon, and just heard an excellent definition of what mammon is. I think it was John Tyson that expressed the idea that mammon is more than money. It is the sophisticated independence whereby we can live life independent of God, and I just added in my own mind, and independent of each other. It is this control of our life and planning it out, and there we have it. We have our prospectus and we're carrying it out, and we are having our prospectus handed to us on a daily basis, and that is ego squashing. And so I went here. And because this is where I live, actually, this is where I live. This is nice, at least for today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And then the second place I went, I said, well, take this and see what this helps you as well. I said this is one of the benefits of reading outside of the circle of of thought that you occupy. In essence, if you're evangelical, you just listen to evangelical authors that are in the fold and safe. And if you're Pentecostal, Pentecostal, and you might dip, Catholic and so on and so forth, atheist. But just go outside of that circle. You'll find all kinds of wisdom and insight that will resonate, and that you'll find rooted in the very scriptures that we say you say that in these you have life, and you're going to see that life amplified and clarified, and so it's one of the benefits, and that's one of the reasons I do read Jewish thought, dip into the rabbis. I figure they were here before us. We actually have their books, and rabbinic thought regarding time. And kind of the biblical way of thinking of time, Jewish spirituality, Jesus spirituality for that matter, is that we tend to look at time as the future is what's in front of us. It's what we're moving into, and the past is, well, of course, behind us. It's back there, and who wants to be back there? So Don't be looking back, and so we'll go to things like no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of heaven. So forget the past, and well, no, it's that you can't steer the plow if you're not going forward. Or Paul in Philippians 3, forgetting the things that are behind and straining towards what is ahead. Again, what is ahead is in front of you. That's the future, and the past. Yeah, that's back here, and so forth. And Paul's actually just talking about the metaphor is that of a race. And in the race, you are stretching towards the goal, which is there, but we're not talking about time. The conception of time was reversed, actually, because the past is the only thing you can see clearly. That's why we say hindsight is 20/20. The past is the only thing you can see clearly. And even then, it can be pretty murky because these lenses through which we're viewing the past can become so colored, and we kind of stack the deck in how we view it. But it's the one thing where we can see pretty clearly what has happened. What we don't see is the future, and so we're not moving into the future. Okay, that's me trying to imitate moving forward into the future. Okay, we are quite literally backing into the future. So the future is what is behind us. We back into it. We don't know what it is. Prophetic insight would be, maybe peripheral vision, where I can kind of see, the back of the chair, and I kind of know it's there anyway. But peripheral vision tells me that it's there. That's kind of what prophetic vision is. It's not a clear view of what's there, but it's kind of that peripheral vision. Yep, there it is. There's it's back there, and so it's like a peak, but it's not a clear one. That should give us some insight as to what we're dealing with in the prophets, and any efforts at prophecy that we would make in our day, in the expression of the prophetic gift. It's just peripheral vision, because the future is, we can't see it. We are backing into it one tentative step at a time. And that's one of the reasons why we need to slow down. And take this, one step at a time. Move into the future, back into the future at 3 miles an hour, which is that's the rate of walk if you're moving at a deliberate, purposeful pace. And you don't want to run backwards. Dicey business, running backwards. So there you have it. So those are the two things I gave him. He said that he was comforted, but I'm sure I will never hear from him again, probably. And who knows, maybe you'll watch it again. I don't know. It's just good to be here. It's good to be here. I could just be talking to myself, and that's okay. I probably mostly am, most of the time. But anyway, I am glad to be back here for today. We'll see if we have to repeat the whole procedure, going back to Maryland again in September to do the other lung. And if so, I will be talking to you from there. But for now, if the Lord wills, it'll be here. All right, so God bless you. and we'll catch you the next time on Thursdays with Mike.